My name is Elena Carter. I'm 36 years old. And the strange thing about losing everything is that it doesn't feel like loss at first. At first, it feels like a normal Tuesday. It feels like dinner simmering on the stove, like your son laughing in the living room, like your husband sitting across from you, scrolling through his phone, looking exactly like the man you married 8 years ago. It feels stable until it isn't. Daniel and I had what most people would call a normal life. We met in college, married at 24. Our son, Liam, was born when I was 29. He's 7 now. Bright, observant, the kind of child who notices things adults wish he wouldn't. From the outside, we look solid. That word matters more now than it ever did before. Solid meant the house, the routines, the shared grocery lists and quiet weekends. It meant stability, or at least the appearance of it. Because I've stopped trying to figure out which parts of my marriage were real and which parts were just performance. My younger sister Chloe is 33, and calling her the golden child isn't bitterness. It's accuracy. Chloe had always been brighter, louder, easier to love in a way I never quite understood but always felt. Her milestones were celebrations. Mine were acknowledgments. She walked into rooms and shifted gravity. People leaned toward her without realizing they were doing it. I learned early how to exist slightly outside that pull. Not ignored. Just second. Always second. About 2 years before everything fell apart, Chloe started coming around more. She had just gone through a breakup, needed family support. That's what she said. So she showed up on weekends, stayed for dinner, played with Liam in the backyard, texted Daniel about recipes, helped him with projects around the house I didn't have time for because I was working 55 hours a week as a logistics manager. I told myself it was a good thing. Family helping family. I didn't notice how easily she fit into spaces that used to belong to me. Or maybe I noticed, and chose not to look too closely. I'm not going to spend time describing the affair. Not because it wasn't important, but because it was predictable. 6 months. My husband. My sister. In my house. While my son played in the next room. There's nothing unique about that kind of betrayal. And I refuse to give it more space than it already took from me. What matters is how I found out. It was Liam. Of course it was. He had Daniel's phone, sitting on the couch playing some game, laughing to himself. Then a message popped up from Chloe. I miss you. Last night was everything. Liam walked into the kitchen, holding the phone like it was nothing more than a toy. Mom, he said, smiling, Aunt Chloe says she misses Dad. 7 years old, holding the evidence of my life collapsing, and smiling because he didn't understand what he was holding. I remember staring at the screen, reading the words, feeling something inside me go completely still. Not break, not shatter, just stop. I confronted Daniel that night. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I just stood there, phone in my hand, and asked, do you want to explain this? He didn't deny it, didn't hesitate, didn't even look surprised. He just exhaled. And for a moment, I saw something I'll never forget. Relief. Like getting caught was easier than pretending anymore. I want a divorce, he said. I haven't been happy in years. Years. He said it so calmly. Like unhappiness was something he'd been quietly carrying while I was busy believing we were building a life together. Chloe understands me, he added. Chloe understands him, my sister, understands my husband in ways I don't. Because apparently understanding requires betrayal, requires secrecy, requires crossing lines you don't come back from. I said yes to the divorce, because at that moment I still believed in something naive. I believed in fairness, in decency, in the idea that even when things fall apart, people try to minimize the damage. I thought we would divide things. Share custody. Move on. Clean. Simple. Adult. What I got instead was a war. A war I didn't even know I was fighting. Because by the time Daniel told me he wanted a divorce, they had already been planning it. He hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. The most aggressive divorce attorney in the county. $450 an hour. I found out later who was paying for it. Chloe. My sister? Funding the legal destruction of my life while sleeping with my husband. Think about that. She wasn't just part of the betrayal. She was investing in it, financing it, building it, like a project, like something she intended to win. I hired who I could afford. A solo attorney named Mark Davis. Competent, overworked, outmatched. On our first meeting, he looked at me and said, if they're paying for that kind of lawyer, they're not looking for a compromise. They're going for everything. I nodded. But I didn't understand. Not yet. I understood the day we walked into court. The day my life split into before and after. The day I realized this wasn't just a divorce. It was a coordinated attack. And I was the only one who didn't know the plan. Because when the hearing started, they didn't just come with accusations. They came with witnesses. 5 of them. 5 people who walked into a courtroom, placed their hands on a Bible, and prepared to lie about who I was. The first one called was my mother, and that was the moment I knew. This was going to be worse than I ever imagined. My mother walked into that courtroom like she belonged there. Calm, composed, certain. Her name is Patricia Carter. She's 61 years old, and she's the woman who taught me how to tie my shoes, how to cook my first meal, how to tell the truth even when it's hard. Or at least, that's who I thought she was. She raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth. And then she looked straight at the judge and lied. She said I had a temper, that I yelled at Liam more than I should, that she had witnessed me grab his arm too roughly at a family barbecue, that she was concerned about my parenting when I was alone with my own son. I remember standing there, listening to her speak, and thinking, this isn't happening, not because I couldn't hear her, but because I couldn't understand how those words were coming out of her mouth. None of it was true. I have never grabbed my son in anger, never hurt him, never been anything other than careful, sometimes overly careful, because I knew how much stability mattered. But in that courtroom, truth didn't sound like truth. Confidence did, and my mother spoke with confidence. The second witness was my father, Robert Carter. He didn't look at me when he took the stand, didn't even glance in my direction. He just adjusted his jacket, sat down, and told the court that I had borrowed money from him, twice, and never paid it back. That I was financially irresponsible. That he didn't believe I could provide a stable home for Liam. I remember gripping the edge of the table so tightly my fingers went numb. Because I had never borrowed money from him. Not once. Not ever. Not a dollar. But he said it like it was documented. Like it was fact. Like it had always been true. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. If someone lies with enough certainty, it becomes indistinguishable from reality. The third witness was Chloe, my sister, the golden child. She walked into that courtroom with the same ease she carried into every room in her life. Confident, polished, untouchable. She didn't cry, didn't hesitate. She just looked at the judge and said that I had confided in her, that I told her the marriage was over, that I didn't care about custody. And then she said the sentence I will never forget. She told me, he can have Liam, I just want out. I felt something inside me fracture then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Because she wasn't just lying. She was choosing words designed to destroy me, to paint me as a mother who didn't want her own child. Liam, the boy I tucked in every night, the boy whose nightmares I stayed up through, the boy who still crawled into my bed on weekends because he said it felt safer. And my sister stood there and erased all of that with one sentence. The fourth witness was Daniel's sister, Megan. She testified that I had been emotionally unstable, that Daniel had confided in her about my verbal outbursts, that I created a tense, unpredictable environment at home. She said she had seen it herself, that she was worried for Liam, afraid even, afraid. The word echoed in my head, because I had never raised my voice beyond normal frustration, never thrown anything, never created fear. But she spoke like she had lived it, like she had witnessed something that didn't exist. The fifth witness was a neighbor, Greg Patterson, a man I barely knew. We exchanged polite waves across the driveway. That was the extent of our relationship. And yet he sat there and testified that he had heard yelling from our house, that he had seen me slam the front door so hard the frame shook, that he was concerned about the environment inside. Concerned. Everyone was concerned. Everyone suddenly had opinions about a life they had never actually seen. 5 witnesses, 5 lies, all aligned, all consistent, all rehearsed. And suddenly I wasn't just defending myself. I was drowning in a narrative that had already been written. My lawyer did what he could, cross-examined, pointed out inconsistencies. But it didn't matter, because one person denying something cannot outweigh 5 people agreeing on it. That's not how perception works. That's not how courts work. That's not how reality feels when you're standing in the middle of it. The judge ruled. Primary custody to Daniel. I got visitation every other weekend, Saturday morning to Sunday evening. 4 days a month. 4 days to be a mother. The house awarded to him, because he was now the primary caregiver. Alimony, $4,200 a month. Child support, $1,800 a month. I remember hearing the numbers like they were being read in another language, like they didn't belong to me, like this wasn't my life. I walked out of that courtroom hollow, not broken, not crying, just empty, like someone had reached inside me and removed something essential. 14 months. That's how long I lived in the aftermath. 14 months of a life I didn't recognize. I moved into a studio apartment, $875 a month. After alimony and child support, I had barely enough left to exist. I ate ramen 4 nights a week, canned soup the other 3. My car had a check engine light I couldn't afford to fix. Every expense became a calculation. Every decision, a compromise. Liam came every other weekend. He'd walk in, look around the apartment, and hesitate. Just for a second, like he didn't quite understand what he was seeing. "Mom," he asked once, "when are we going home?" I smiled. Because that's what you do. You smile for your child even when your world is collapsing. "This is home right now, baby?" He frowned. "I don't like this home." And then he said the sentence that stayed with me for months. "Can we go to the big home?" The big home. My house. The one Daniel was living in. With Chloe. With my son's room. My son's bed. My son's life. That's where Chloe tucked him in at night. In my place. In my life. In the space I built. Funded, ironically, by the money I was sending every month. Because that's what alimony felt like. Not support. Not fairness. Funding your replacement. 14 months of that. 14 months of watching from the outside. 14 months of being reduced to weekends. 14 months of pretending to be okay. Because my son needed me to be. My mother called sometimes. Asked how I was doing. The same woman who told a judge I was dangerous. My father said nothing. Not a call. Not a message. Just silence. And Chloe? She posted pictures. Liam on her shoulders. In my backyard. Smiling. Like none of this had cost anything. Like everything they had taken was theirs to keep. And then, in month 15, something shifted. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to pick it up. A voice on the other end. Nervous. Shaking. "Elena, it's Greg, the neighbor." I went still. "I need to talk to you," he said, in person. A pause. Then, "It's about the court hearing." Another pause. Longer this time. And then the words that changed everything. "I don't feel right about what I did." That was the moment. The crack in the story. The first fracture in the lie that took my life apart. And for the first time in 14 months, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel. Not hope. Not yet. But something close to it. Something dangerous. Something that whispered, "This isn't over." I met Greg Patterson at a diner off Route 8. One of those tired places with cracked vinyl booths, weak coffee, and fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look a little guilty. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in the corner, hands clasped so tightly in front of him that his knuckles had gone pale. The second I saw his face, I knew this wasn't going to be a half apology. This was fear. Real fear. The kind that settles into a man after he's had too much time alone with his own conscience. He stood when I walked over, then sat back down immediately, like his knees didn't trust him. "Elena," he said, voice rough, I lied. No build-up. No excuse first. Just the truth, finally dragged into daylight. I slid into the booth across from him and didn't say anything. I wanted him to fill the silence. I wanted him to hear how heavy it was. He kept talking. In court, Chloe told me what to say. She coached me, word for word. The yelling, the door slamming, all of it. None of it happened. I never heard anything from your house. I stared at him, not because I didn't believe him, but because after 14 months of carrying the weight of their lies, hearing even one person undo a piece of it felt almost unreal. Like my body didn't know how to process relief without mistrusting it first. Greg swallowed hard. She helped me build that deck, remember? 3 weekends in a row. Said she needed a favor. Said it was just to help Daniel keep Liam safe. That you were unstable. I was stupid enough to believe her. Or maybe... He shook his head. Maybe I just liked feeling useful. I had my phone on the table between us. Voice memo running. I didn't hide it. This time I wanted the truth documented in plain sight. I asked him, "Will you put that in writing?" He nodded so fast it almost looked desperate. "I'll do whatever you need. I can't live with this anymore." And for once, someone else had to sit with the weight of what they'd done to me. Greg signed an affidavit the next day. A sworn statement. Detailed. Dates. Conversations. The deck. The favor. The exact script Chloe gave him. One lie unraveled. And with it, the whole thing finally began to shake. I didn't go back to Mark Davis. Not because he had failed me, but because this was no longer a regular custody case. This was fraud. Coordinated, deliberate, documented fraud. I needed someone who understood how to take apart something rotten without breaking the truth underneath it. That's how I found Carla Vasquez. Former prosecutor. Family law specialist. The kind of woman who didn't waste words because she preferred to spend her energy on outcomes. Her office was sharp, clean, quiet. No fake warmth. No motivational plaques. No performative empathy. Just law books, clean glass, and a woman who looked at evidence the way surgeons look at scans. I handed her Greg's affidavit. Then the recording. Then the original court documents. She read in silence for a long time. Not skimming, reading. Actually reading. When she finally looked up, her expression hadn't softened, but something in it had sharpened. If even one witness committed perjury, she said, the integrity of the original ruling is compromised. I nodded. She tapped the affidavit lightly with one finger. You said your mother testified that you grabbed your son roughly? Yes. Any evidence that happened? No, because it didn't. She leaned back in her chair, then said the sentence that felt like oxygen after drowning. We're reopening this case. Not maybe. Not we'll try. Not there's a chance. We're reopening this case. And in that moment, for the first time in 15 months, I felt something stronger than grief. Control. Carla moved fast. She filed a motion to reopen the custody ruling based on newly discovered evidence of witness fraud. The judge granted it within a week. A sworn recantation from a material witness tends to get attention, especially when custody is involved, especially when the original ruling hinged on testimony rather than hard evidence. But Carla didn't stop with Greg. Greg was only the opening. She went after everyone. First, my mother. Carla subpoenaed phone records and text messages. She found them. Messages between Patricia and Daniel from the week before the original hearing. Daniel, just say what we talked about. Keep it simple. My mother. I know. I've practiced it. Don't worry. I've practiced it. Those 4 words sat in my chest like broken glass. Because perjury wasn't spontaneous for her. It wasn't a nervous exaggeration. It wasn't confusion. My mother rehearsed her lies. She practiced them. Like lines. Like delivery mattered. Like sounding believable mattered more than telling the truth. And maybe it did. Because it worked. For 14 months, it worked. Then Carla subpoenaed Chloe's financial records. That was where the mask started to come off completely. There it was. Payment after payment to Daniel's attorney. $38,000 total. My younger sister wasn't just the affair partner. She was the financier. The architect. The engine. She hadn't fallen into betrayal. She budgeted for it, funded it, managed it. She was paying to strip me of my son, my house, and my stability, while stepping directly into the life she helped destroy. I remember staring at the records in Carla's office and thinking, this wasn't personal chaos. This was a campaign. Everything I had lost had been itemized in someone else's strategy. Next came Daniel's sister, Megan. She lasted less than 20 minutes in deposition. That's all it took. 20 minutes under oath without the comfort of a courtroom performance, and the script fell apart. She admitted Daniel had told her what to say. Admitted the verbal abuse never happened. Admitted she had never been afraid for Liam. She cried while she said it. Real tears. Messy ones. The kind that might have meant something if they had arrived before she helped take my child from me. I just wanted to help my brother, she said. That was her explanation. Help him. As if I were collateral damage in some ordinary family conflict. As if Liam losing daily access to his mother was just an unfortunate side effect. As if the truth mattered less because protecting Daniel felt easier. Carla let her cry. Then kept asking questions. Because tears do not undo testimony. My father was last. Carla subpoenaed his bank records. The 2 loans he claimed I never repaid, they didn't exist. No checks, no transfers, no cash withdrawals matching the amounts he swore under oath that he had given me. Nothing. Because there had never been anything to find. He invented those debts from nothing. Created financial instability where there was none. And the ugliest part wasn't even the lie itself. It was the confidence behind it. The certainty that a judge would believe a father talking about his daughter's finances. Because why would a father lie? That question sat underneath everything. Why would a mother lie that her daughter was dangerous? Why would a father invent debt? Why would a sister claim a mother didn't want her child? Why would a husband recruit witnesses? The answer, once you strip away the shock, is simple. Because they believed they could. And because the first time they were right. 4 witnesses collapsed. Greg recanted. My mother was caught in texts. Megan confessed. My father was exposed by documents. Only Chloe refused to break. She hired a lawyer, stopped speaking directly, wrapped herself in legal language and silence. But it didn't matter. Her bank records spoke just fine. So did the timing. So did the messages between her and Daniel. So did Greg's affidavit describing exactly how she recruited him. Chloe could keep her mouth closed all she wanted. The paper trail had already learned her voice. The new hearing lasted 2 days. 2 long, surgical, brutal days. Carla presented everything. Greg's affidavit and a recording. The text between my mother and Daniel. Chloe's payments to Daniel's attorney. Megan's deposition. My father's bank records. One by one, the story they built was stripped down to its wires. Not a misunderstanding. Not emotional exaggeration. Not a bitter divorce. Fraud. Coordinated fraud. Daniel's attorney tried to soften it. Tried to call it emotional family confusion. Said, people in divorce proceedings sometimes characterize events too strongly. That does not necessarily amount to deliberate fabrication. Carla stood, calm, controlled, precise. Your Honor, she said, This was not imprecise testimony. It was rehearsed testimony. It was coordinated through text messages, supported by financial payments, and bolstered by recruited witnesses. This was not a custody dispute that became emotional. This was fraud upon the court. Fraud upon the court. The phrase landed like a blade, and I watched the judge's face change, not dramatically. Judges don't perform outrage. But over those 2 days, neutrality drained from him in visible layers. Concern first, then irritation, then something colder. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. They hadn't only lied about me. They had used his courtroom to do it, used his authority, used the legal system meant to protect children as a weapon to remove a mother from her son's daily life. And judges do not like being turned into accomplices by deception. I sat there the whole time, spine straight, hands folded in my lap, because if I let myself shake, I wasn't sure I'd stop. I kept thinking about Liam's little voice in that studio apartment. Can we go to the big home? I kept thinking about how casually my family had stolen something sacred and then called it law. And for the first time since the divorce, I didn't feel helpless in that courtroom. I felt dangerous. Not loud, not bitter. Dangerous in the quiet way. Truth becomes dangerous when it is finally documented. By the end of the second day, Daniel wouldn't look at me. My mother looked 10 years older than she had at the first hearing. My father kept his eyes on the table. Megan cried again. And Chloe? Chloe sat stiff and polished and pale, like she still believed posture could save her. It couldn't. Not this time. The judge gathered the papers in front of him, removed his glasses, looked across the courtroom. Then he said he would deliver his ruling after a brief recess. A brief recess. That was all that stood between me and the answer that would decide whether the last 14 months remained the defining theft of my life, or became the beginning of their collapse. I sat there with my pulse pounding in my throat. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't pray to survive. I prayed for justice. The courtroom felt different when the judge came back. He didn't rush, didn't shuffle papers, didn't clear his throat like this was routine. He sat down slowly, like the weight of what he was about to say mattered. And then he looked directly at me, not through me, not past me, at me. The court finds, he began, voice measured, but edged with something unmistakably sharp, that the original custody ruling was materially influenced by testimony that has since been proven to be false, coordinated, and, in multiple instances, deliberately fabricated. Every word landed. Heavy, precise, final, he continued. This court does not tolerate perjury. It does not tolerate manipulation of judicial proceedings, and it will not allow a ruling based on fraud to stand. I didn't move, didn't breathe, because after 14 months of losing everything, I had learned not to trust hope until it was spoken out loud. Primary custody of the minor child, Liam Carter, is hereby awarded to the mother, Elena Carter. For a second, I didn't understand the words, not because they were unclear, but because my brain had spent so long preparing for loss, it didn't recognize the sound of winning. Then it hit me, all at once, like oxygen flooding back into lungs that had forgotten what air felt like. Visitation for the father, Daniel Carter, will be supervised pending further evaluation. Supervised. The word echoed in my chest, because that was the label they had built for me. Dangerous, unstable, unfit. And now it had turned. Quietly. Completely. The marital home is to be sold. Proceeds will be divided, with a larger share awarded to Ms. Carter as restitution for financial damages incurred under the prior fraudulent ruling. Restitution. Another word that felt unreal. Like something reserved for other people's stories. Not mine. Alimony is terminated effective immediately. A breath I didn't know I was holding. Released. The court orders reimbursement in the amount of $58,800, representing 14 months of alimony payments made under false pretenses. $58,800. 14 months of ramen dinners. Of check engine lights I couldn't fix. Of watching my son sleep on an air mattress in a room too small to hold both of us comfortably. 14 months quantified. Recognized. Returned. And finally, the judge said, voice turning colder, this court refers all evidence of perjury and fraud to the district attorney for further investigation. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Because everyone in that room understood what that meant. Not consequences in theory. Consequences in motion. I didn't cry. Not in that moment. I just sat there, very still. Because something inside me had shifted too deeply for tears to reach it yet. This wasn't relief. Not exactly. It was something quieter. Something steadier, like a foundation rebuilding itself after being cracked open. My mother called that night. I stared at her name on my phone for a long time before answering. Her voice broke the second I said hello. Elena, please, I'm facing charges. I don't know what to do. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. I closed my eyes, listened, let her finish. Because for 14 months, I hadn't had a voice that mattered. Now I did. You practiced it, I said. She stopped. What? You texted Daniel. You said you practiced what to say. You rehearsed telling a judge that I hurt my son. Silence. Then a weak, trembling, I didn't think it would go this far. It went exactly as far as you helped push it. Her breathing turned uneven. I'm your mother. The words landed and passed right through me. Because something fundamental had already broken. You were, I said quietly. Mothers don't do what you did? Her sobs turned louder. Desperate. I was trying to help. You helped take my son from me for 14 months. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. I hope you get the help you need, I added. And then I hung up. I haven't spoken to her since. My father didn't call. Not that night. Not the next day. Not ever. He disappeared into silence so complete it felt intentional. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was strategy. Maybe it was easier to say nothing than to admit everything. I stopped wondering which. Chloe tried once. A week after the ruling. She showed up at my door, unannounced, standing there like she still belonged anywhere near my life. You can't shut me out forever, she said. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Careful. Measured. Like she had finally learned what consequences sounded like. You're my sister. I looked at her. Really looked. At the person who had sat across from me at holidays. Who had laughed in my kitchen. Who had tucked my son into bed in my house. And then I saw the rest. The planning. The funding. The quiet, deliberate decisions. You paid for it, I said. Her expression flickered. I didn't. $38,000. Silence. I saw the records. Her shoulders dropped slightly, like the last piece of performance had slipped. I thought. She started, then stopped. Thought what? That I wouldn't fight back? That I wouldn't survive long enough to uncover it? That I would stay small the way I always had? I didn't think it would end like this, she said finally. That was the closest thing to honesty she'd given me. And it wasn't enough. It ended exactly the way it was always going to end, I replied. When you build something on lies, it collapses. I stepped back, closed the door, and this time I didn't feel second. I felt done. Daniel didn't come to the apartment, didn't call, didn't try to explain. Maybe there was nothing left to say. Or maybe for the first time, he realized I wasn't someone he could talk his way around anymore. Liam came home that weekend, not for a visit, not for 2 days. Home, full time. He walked into the new apartment, 2 bedrooms this time, and looked around slowly, carefully, like he was memorizing it. This is ours? He asked. Yes, I said. For real? For real. He walked down the hallway, pushed open the door to his room. His name was on it. Not a sticker, not temporary. A small wooden plaque I had made. Liam. He stepped inside, touched the bed, the desk, the bookshelf, turned back to me, and smiled. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen in months. I like this home better, he said. I leaned against the door frame. Why? He thought about it for a second, then shrugged. Because you're here every day. That was it. That was everything. Not the house, not the money, not the court ruling. Just presence, consistency, being there. Carla sent me a card after the case closed. Simple, no long message. Just one line. Justice delayed is still justice. I kept it. Because she was right. 14 months were stolen. By 5 people who lied. By a system that believed them. By a sister who funded it. By parents who rehearsed it. By a husband who orchestrated it. They took 14 months, but they didn't get the rest. The house is gone. Sold. The alimony is over. The payments reversed. The case closed. The referrals pending. Chloe lost her job. Daniel lost everything he thought he was building. My parents are waiting for consequences they can't talk their way out of. And me? I wake up every morning in a home that is mine. Make breakfast for my son. Walk him to school. Tuck him in at night. Be there when he calls out at 2 a.m. 10 feet away. Not 45 minutes. Not 4 days a month. Every day. They lied in court. They won for 14 months. I told the truth. And I won the rest of my life.